Well, John, from the Expeditions Council perspective, since we're looking at funding projects of exploration and adventure, which will generate compelling, inspiring, educational stories, potentially for our media, our web in particular is very interested in what our young explorers are doing in National Geographic Radio and so on. You really need to do a little research on what National Geographic has covered recently in your area of interest. So if we were just, you know, in Gabon documenting gorilla behavior, then proposing a story on that, you're also competing in essence with some of our older grantees in terms of telling the stories. So take a look, do your homework. Go to our website, we have an index of publications, and check out what's been on National Geographic Television and so on. And you'll find out. We have actually funded some projects which are in a region of the world where we were not too long ago, but we actually had individuals apply who had a unique approach to covering the topic, where the web was actually interested in hearing an additional report from a different perspective or a different angle. So do your homework in terms of what we've been covering. It's hard to know what's in the works at National Geographic. People we work with all the time may approach us with a pitch and not realizing that television or the magazine already has a story on that subject underway. But do as much legwork as you can in that regard. Also, make sure your project is not too broad in scope. Cycling the entire continent of Africa, which was a proposal that came to us, we said, you know, this doesn't quite sound realistic for $20,000 and, you know, doing it in several months and that sort of thing. So really focus in, zero in, tighten up your topic in terms of Expeditions Council Young Explorer grants. You could visit 2 sites for a comparative sort of study or exploration, but do make it tight. The realistic budget, can't emphasize enough. Don't make it too meager, because we actually have had some young explorers who went a little bit hungry while they were out there in the field and lost a few pounds. But we also we take a hard look, and we've actually awarded more money in a couple of cases when we felt that there wasn't enough in terms of supplies and food. But those are sort of key points.
Thanks, Rebecca. Kenny, you want to add something? Kenny is emerging explorer and a past grantee as well as one of your faculty members, so I'm sure he has some more to add here.
Well, I'll just add, first of all, Jan and I wouldn't have pushed to have this event here if we didn't have a lot of faith in your creativity and your intelligence, and we're counting on you. I guess I can maybe say just a couple brief things. One, I'll admit, I'm the one who gave the Lilliputian proposal after I recently read Gulliver's Travels, right? So I'll admit that. So don't give up. In fact, you know, this Blue Holes thing that's getting a lot of attention, it took us about 3 years to get it ramped up to actually get funded. And it really, when they say their doors and phones are open, they really are. I mean, Tim and Angie, also known as Emily, are, you know, they look like these normal straight-laced people, but they're not. So don't hesitate to call them up and bounce ideas off them and any of the people here. It's an organization that looks big and ominous and bureaucratic perhaps on the outside, but they're really people who take you under their wing and have all the time in the world for you, and I can't thank them enough for that personally. So hang in there. And then my only other kind of advice, besides don't take my advice, would be, you know, when you think about strategizing for your application, I think you can kind of think in 2 different ways. One is, what's something that nobody has done? You know, what's really out there doable, but, you know, whatever. I want to go to Uttar Pradesh with a new technology that allows me, you know, to see with infrared to find the elusive Yeti. Okay, probably no one's ever done that and make a good case for it. Or on the other side, the other end of the spectrum, something that might seem very mundane, okay, conserving a certain rare species or tree, but everyone's always looked at it biologically, ecologically, you know, from the climate impacts, but no one's talked to the people who live and surround this area from a kind of community conservation standpoint. So it can be something right in front of your eyes, or it could be something far remote, but frame it properly, and I think, you know, you have a good chance of getting something.
Thanks, Kenny. And I listened to Kenny carefully when he talks about not being straight-laced, because if there's a person with an eye and a good knowledge of what's not straight-laced, Kenny's there. Jan?
Yeah, so I've seen, I think, all of these proposals in the past 4 or 5 years that made it to the committee. And there's a great variety among them, you know, so never think that this is too unusual or too out of the box. And in a way, you know, we have many different types of categories of proposals, and this is the JAG proposals, as we call them, Young Explorer Grants. This is the level where we, in a way, expect things to be outside of the box, new, you know, new ways of thinking, new ideas. And the heart of a JAG proposal is the idea, in 2 sentences. Something that's interesting, something that's intriguing. Forget for a moment if this is doable or not, but it starts with that. That's the heart of it. Then, there are many things that have to be good about a proposal, but then there are 2 things that I would emphasize. One is the significance of it. So yeah, it's an intriguing idea, it's very interesting. Why is it important, right? Which can also boil down to the question, why this species, for example, or why this place, why here or there, right? You have to think of that. That's very important because it's about the significance of it. It's not just cool, it's important, right? And then there's the question, and this is a hard one, if the idea hasn't come, if the idea comes naturally to you, that's all great. And then the hard part is a good design. And that comprises a lot more, and that's where you have to get help, I would say. You know, because a study design is about what we in the academic community already know about the stuff that you're interested in. What do we already know? What's your hook, right? And how does that hook to the problem connect to the existing literature on this sort of stuff? What kind of an empirical analysis? What are your methods? This is all study design. And we know, of course, that many of you are quite young and starting out, so you should get that help. You will write it, but you should get the help, and you should look for your major professors. You should ask around. You should maybe show them some thoughts that you have on paper and get feedback on that. That's where the help begins, I believe. But the idea has to just, you know, it has to be your idea, and you have to be passionate about it, because that's where it begins or ends. And I think that's good news, isn't it? That it works like that.
So yeah, so Jan has lots of experience from the research committee perspective. He's one of the key people who votes on these at the every meeting. Anne serves, I didn't mention, on the Expeditions Council advisory board. And so she is kind of has a complementary role to Jan's, but from the Expeditions Council. And a lot of the work that we get has to do with archaeology and nautical archaeology and some of the other areas of her expertise. So Anne, what would you add to this conversation?
Well, I'd like to just make a couple of sort of practical comments from the point of a reviewer. One of the things that we do expect is good use of language, good use of communication skills, spelling counts. It says something about how disciplined you are. It says something about how much you care about how your work looks. If English is not your first language and you're submitting in English, then have someone else look at it. Your point is to communicate. We really want to get to that idea. We really want to understand it, but we need it in a good, well-written, grammatically spelling everything else correct. So please take that into consideration. Not a lot of acronyms, not a lot, you know, spell it out, Y-O-U. I know you're not texting us. This is real stuff. So we need that consideration. And then a point on salaries. They mentioned you can't give yourself a salary. Well, you can't pay salaries to your brother either. So you need to look very carefully at those rules, at the age rules, at the amount of money rules that are part of the application process. There are sort of consulting fees. I think that, you know, if you need a specialist driver or something, that person may get compensation, but you have to understand the distinction. Why create a trigger, a red flag that's going to say to us, they didn't even read the application? How do we know they read the rest of the stuff? So that's kind of something we're sensitive to. And in terms of the passion, Geographic is passionate about many things that you've heard about today, and the future and the excitement and the adventure and the earth. These count. And one of the things that not only Geographic, but many of the other partner organizations that have mentioned care about is, what are you going to do? Is this like a one-time little thing that you're going to do? Or do we have a sense that you're really sharing what we care about, what the granting agency cares about, what the organization, the not-for-profit that may be helping you is caring about? Now, it's true, you may do this for a year and then go off and become a dentist. That's okay. But there will be follow-up. It's important to know that we have a sense of giving money that will help build on things that the institution cares about as important. So that's kind of a new thing that's coming up with grants and with organizations, is a bit more follow-up on what happens to the people that are funded and that have received an investment from this organization.